So hi guys, today I have something rather special for you. Recently I was contacted by one of my acquaintances at the school where I'm teaching, and there is a podcast and radio line in there. So there was this guy, Ronnie. So he was doing quite an ambitious podcast about this fictional South American country called La Plancha. So he wanted me to do a few jingles for that podcast, a national anthem for that country. So you can imagine how I was excited about the opportunity to write a national anthem for a country. And that's not something that many people have the privilege of doing. So even though it's a fictional country, nonetheless, I wanted to take in the challenge for that. So I'm going to be opening the process on how that national anthem was created in this video, and you'll see just how the process went through. So here we go, La Plancha. How should I approach this? I approached it with first planning and what is my mental image of national anthems in general. Well, usually one hears national anthems in sports events. So I thought about the soccer games that I've been seeing, and I thought about the South American soccer games in the World Championship series that I've seen many times. And I thought about the mental image of those fans belting away and singing from their hearts, singing their heart out, all those national anthems during the games, in the beginning of the games. And I used that as a mental image for that. I wanted the national anthem that I would be writing for La Plancha to be also something that a soccer fan would be able to really sing out in the pews there. So the background for the country was that there had been a dictatorship that had been abolished many decades ago. So I wanted to include some kind of old marching band instrumentation. So definitely using a lot of brass and snare drums. So that's what I wanted to include there. And then I started imagining the melody being belted away by that South American fan. God, how it started. I started singing like so I started messing around with an idea of that kind of melody, and I wanted to make it strongly motivic, so that the first motive would be repeated. So ba 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 ba, then repeat ba 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 ba, and then continue with the same but rising higher. Ba 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 da ba ba da ba 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 ba. So I wanted to do it like that, with a rising melody line in the A part, making it very triumphant and march-like. So that was a beginning idea. Then I think I also sang the B part, a kind of a draft for that B part. And here's how it looked like, actually. So here it is. I started low, using the same motive over here, then continuing higher, and then ending with a 5. So I wanted to end with a dominant to bring that classical feeling and the classical structure to the harmony. And then I wanted to repeat that some way, doing like a refrain of that same phrase, but instrumentally, just like an instrumental refrain of that same last idea of the melody. And then the B part. like a regular, going higher with a different kind of feeling, a contrasting feeling where the melody line is now descending, where in the A part it was ascending. And then I wanted to end with some kind of secondary dominant cycle. So, so basically here we're going towards the third degree, like an F sharp minor, with a C sharp secondary dominant there. And then up here, ending the phrase also to the 5. So here we are also ending the phrase to the secondary dominant, going towards the 5, and then sort of omitting the 5th, going towards the 1 once again. So I didn't know where harmonically this would be going later on, but I wanted to leave it open like this, like a half cadence type of thing. Okay, so this was the first draft. Of course, even before this, I wanted to look at the lyrics. So that would actually be the source of the melody or the rhythm of the melody in the fine detail. So I wanted to first look at the lyrics. So I had the ideas for the lyrics here as well. The ideas were like march-like, classical, Spanish words, Spanish lyrics, pompous, nationalistic, and those were the kinds of adjectives that I wanted to be using. Also, I wanted to think about, I thought about the theme. What kinds of things should I include there? And I concluded that many of the national romantic anthems that have been written for other countries many times include themes from nature, themes from things that are inherent to the country. So I wanted to think about a national flower that would be included in the lyrics. So I tried to look for flowers that would be unique to that country so that it couldn't be linked to any other country in the South America. So basically I found this royal purple Brunfelsia, or yesterday, today and tomorrow flower, which is native to South America, but is not any other country's national flower. So I wanted to include that in the feeling of the lyrics. So basically in the end, I wrote it first in my native language, Finnish, and then I translated that into Spanish using AI. So there were themes about freedom, beauty, truth, elevated, or these kind of lofty themes that could be used there. A nation holds together like its hills that are spreading over the valleys, be it dark or be it light, as the rain whips. And there are these natural themes about dark and light, rain and storm, traveling through the country. Like a flower, beautiful and wonderful. You're the beautification of the valleys or the meadows and brooks. And when the mind travels to the horrors of history, you raise our minds to beauty. So that was one of the carrying themes there. And then there's something about cavalry and leading our way, being faithful, raising the flag, and where there's a new time under the country. So that was the lyrical content of that. And then I translated that into Spanish. En libertar beleza y verdad sin fin, el pueblo es uno como sus montes sin fin. That is how it begins. And I used this lyric then as a basis for the whole melody writing with the fine rhythm. I had the melody line created, but I used this text to create the fine little details of the rhythm. So then I had the text and I had the melody. The next big step was to create different melody lines that would be the other instruments that would be accompanying it. So I had the melody line. Now I wanted to create the bass line and 2 intermediate lines of melody. Basically, when I'm doing a draft, I usually take at least 4 different staff lines, and here is like 2 piano staff lines, so I can add some bass there and maybe some percussion to the lower staves, and then the lines that are in between the bass line and the melody are on this third staff line over here. So basically, here we have the melody going on, bum 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 ba-dum. This is like an intro for this melody that I came up with. Bum 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 ba-dum, bum ba-dum ba-dum, bum ba-dum ba-dum ba-dum, bum bum. And then we have that between melody line responding here. So basically the melody line, the bass line doing something, and then the intermediary lines responding to the melody line. It sounds like this. Okay, so that was the intro. And then going on to the main melody. Bum bum ba-dum dun 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 dun. And I wanted to create a bass line that had a strict motive in it, so that it would be similar going from one bar to the next, holding a thematic coherence there. And I wanted it to be like march-like, bum 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 bum, like that. And in between lines would also go together with the bass line over there. So it sounds like this. And the bass line goes a little away. And then the refrain. Okay, so then we go to the B part, and there's a little bit of a different motive there for the comping the bass line. So we have here bum 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 bum. That's like the beginning of the B part there. That's actually a B part. Let's turn that away. So going down with the harmony. And then towards the other part. Okay, so that was the draft for the lines for the A and the B part and the intro. Then I had also the ending here, which I drafted separately. Like that. So ending with the first degree D major there. Okay, so that was the entire thing in the draft. And after and the draft is a really important thing, because if you start looking at a score which has all these different lines, you have like 35 different instrument lines in that marching band score. So basically, if you start with the 35 lines, it's easy to get lost in all those staff lines. But that's why you have to draft, because that's like a blueprint for the entire thing. You have the 4 different instrument lines. You can do, usually I do from 3 to 5 different lines in that part, in that draft. But basically you have 3 to 5 different lines that you are using in the draft. And that gives you a blueprint for all the other lines. So basically you can do it like you have the melody line, and then you choose which different instruments play that melody line. For example, the piccolo flute, the flute, the horns, and the trumpets. You give that melody to those instruments. Then you take the bass line and you give those bass line notes to different instruments in the bass range. For example, the bassoon, the tuba, the double bass, and so forth. And bass trombone, for example. So that's something that is really useful when you're orchestrating large scores. And that is to take your draft and then orchestrate it, make a plan for the orchestration for the whole thing. For example, 4 bars, 4 bars, or using different phrases for different orchestrations. Definitely changing between the parts. So that makes the process a lot easier and a lot faster. And actually, I didn't spend that much time in the orchestration part of this tune, even though we have like 35 different staff lines there working all together. So let's look at the big orchestration now. Okay, so this is the big one. This has all these different instruments. We have the woodwinds beginning from here. The woodwinds actually also continue with the saxophone section, 5 saxophones there. Then we have the brass section and euphonium and tuba ending that section, and then double bass, and then the percussion with timpani, side drum, bass drum, and clash cymbal. So that is the entire instrumentation. Piccolo, flute, oboe, bassoon, clarinet, 4 different clarinets, actually 5, alto saxophones, tenors, baritones. Then we have 3 trumpets, 4 horns, 3 trombones, euphonium, and tuba. And then the percussion and double bass. So that's the concert band score instrumentation for this tune. So basically you can see the different lines operating here. We have the melody line played by the piccolo, flute, clarinet, 2 clarinets actually, trumpets, horns in octaves, and trombones. Then we have the bass line operating here with the bassoon in octaves actually, with 2 bassoons. Then we have bass clarinet taking it, the baritone saxophone, horn, no, those are the mediary lines, tuba, and double bass, yes. Those are the instruments taking up the bass. And then the intermediary notes, here we have oboes, clarinets, intermediary clarinets, then we have horns, trombones, taking up those, and then we have also the snare drum coming in with those. So basically that's how I use these lines throughout this entire tune. Okay, that's the intro, and then we go pretty clear with the orchestration, changing a little bit, taking the different instruments to those different lines. We can listen to it now, actually. Repeat. Then we have A part repeating, changing the orchestration a bit, going to the B part, and then the ending. And here we have the ending. So that's the entirety of the orchestration. And the process was pretty fast because of the planning that I did in the draft stage to think about the different instruments that are going to play the different melody lines. So the next part was to go to Cubase, and I opened up Cubase. So let's open it up over here. So next part was to open Cubase and start using different VSTs to get a better sound for the different instruments. So many of the instruments that are in the concert band, I already have a VST for them. So I just inserted them. I'm mainly using Spitfire Symphony Orchestra VST here. Basically, I imported the MIDI file to Cubase and then started transferring the different parts, making sure the octaves are correct, because sometimes the octaves that come from the MIDI part in Dorico or your music notation software tend to differ from the ones that are programmed to the VST. So I made sure the octaves are right and made sure that the articulation is all right. And then I had some problems because I don't have any saxophone VSTs, so I muted them. But basically I added them one by one. Piccolo first, flutes, oboes, bassoons, clarinets. I actually used just a same B-flat clarinet for all of these because I didn't have a different E-flat clarinet VST, so I just used the same one, B-flat, for those. Bass clarinet was separate. The alto saxophones, I didn't like the sound that much, so it was way too overpowering when compared to the actual orchestral recordings, so I just muted them and omitted that from the actual score. The original one had alto doing the melody in quite a few parts, and also the other saxophones chiming in, and the baritone doing the bass lines. But I omitted those because it was difficult to reconcile the sound of the quite crude MIDI sounds with the orchestral sounds. So here's how that sounded like. And so after working through all the instruments, checking them out individually, seeing how they sound, we can, for example, check out bass clarinet here. There it is. We can add clarinets, you know, and taking different parts here. Maybe adding a melody line here, flute. So it's fun to check out the different instruments and also try out maybe different combinations of orchestration too in the same process. So here it was. Hope you enjoyed the video. Go like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.